Roslyn is so special is because we have all of this information. And it's the most fascinating place. The people that have lived here, the history, how it's developed over the last 300 years. As I said, just very quickly, 1650s, the settlers come over from Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut. And, they float in here on a ship because, they didn't take a minivan. And they just saw it, they said, okay, it's a navigable harbor. It's a good place to tent up. And this is where they stayed. And so from that 1650 to 1700, very little happened here. A few houses. We have one house that we're going to go into today that was built in that time period. Around 1700, this fellow Robeson got a grant from the government somehow. He got money and he built this grist mill that we're also going to go in today because we're renovating the building. But what do you need to do a mill? You need to have water running, which was plentiful here because you had all these ponds, which was really a swamp at that time. They weren't these beautiful ponds that you see today. So they had to build also a mill dam. So right now where this Northern Boulevard is, that was a dam, a mill dam, just wide enough for a horse and carriage. It wasn't big enough for a street. And this whole Northern Boulevard business, this was an Indian footpath that took you from wherever you started as far out east as you could go. So between 1700 and 1800, but because this port was here, it doesn't look anything like it does now. There was big, tall sailing ships that were in here, kind of like South Street Seaport. You go down there, and there was a dock, and they had all of these little fingers of estuaries that came in, and all of these boats were. And there was a gigantic lumber yard. So there was a grist mill, and then there was another. There was a sawmill. There was a silk mill. You have to understand that these mill buildings, they were the big industrial. I like to call them the Apple stores of their time. That's where it was all happening. You have the picture? Oh, that's my favorite one. Just pass this around, Noam. You can get a sense. And this picture was taken not that long ago. This is, I think, 1964. Is that when that one was taken, Noam?
Yeah, 62.
62. And at that time, there was a lot of houseboats. People were living there. I mean, the whole point I'm getting to is that what's the development of Roslyn. Between 1700 and 1800, it was slow moving. If you do a graph, 1650 to 1700, almost nothing's happening here. Few houses, low population. Even 1700 to 1800, the graph is kind of going up. You got the mill starting to do industrial stuff. They build a paper mill as well. That's further there. The paper mill that's there now, that's a replica building. But then from 1800 to 1900, that's when things are rocking here in Roslyn. And when we walk around today, all of these buildings, with the exception of a couple of houses at the end, are going to be houses or buildings that were built in 1800. Try not to forget, houses then were much, much smaller. And we'll talk about a few of them that were moved. It was very common for houses to be moved. And why? Because they're so small. They could put them on a little dolly and cart and move them. The Skew's house that we're going to look at on East Broadway, but that house was moved here from Glenwood Landing. And it was a little schoolhouse. These little buildings, they served both as a house or as a business. A general store, blacksmith shops. We're going to see one of those also. What happens throughout the 1800s is that slowly the industrial quality here in Roslyn is diminishing. And why? Because we're not the only game in town of having a port. The way things are moved around, instead of tall sailing ships, of course, you have steamships that are much more reliable. And these ships are going out of our harbor, and they're going to all kinds of places. And then there's the Erie Canal that opens up. That changes the complexity of everything, too. But what ends up happening is that Roslyn starts to change around 1860, 1865, something like that. What happens? There's an extension of the railroad that comes into Roslyn. So at the same time we're developing, New York City is really developing. But all of this money's in New York City. And New York City at that time is not the greatest. It's a good place for business. But these industrialists that start to make a lot of money, some that are living here, they don't want to raise a family in New York City. It's too dirty and messy, and the sewer system is not great, and it's animals. They want to raise their family out here in bucolic Roslyn, and the word gets out. And you have William Cullen Bryant that moves out here, and all of a sudden this guy Bryant starts telling all of his buddies in New York City, "Hey, you got to come out to Roslyn." And by the time you get to the end of the 1800s, you have so many of these, and we'll see some of them. I'm not going to talk about them a lot, but I'll just point them out. Some of the high style buildings that we have here: Federal style, Italianate, all of these popular revival styles that are starting to become popular throughout the colonies and in the coast and further inland are showing up here too. And it's not these tiny little buildings I was talking about that we move around. We use them for houses. We use them for a blacksmith shop. And it comes to a crescendo with this Harbor Hill. People don't know this. Harbor Hill was an estate, one of these big mansions that they're still all over Long Island, and the most famous ones are in Rhode Island. They're in Newport, and this estate is built on the principles of Versailles itself. I mean, this thing is a couple of 100 acres up there. It is a mansion building. Look at this. Okay. It's built on the principles of Versailles, and we have several remaining. Noam, you can pass that around. We have several remaining vestiges from that. There's the we're going to see it today. We're going to walk by. There's the Tamer's statue that's right inside in the duck pond that we rescued. There's still a water tower from them. There's the dairyman's cottage, and recently what we have that we've been restoring also is the Gate Lodge. And what we do here is the Roslyn Landmark Society, especially since we have the funding of the Gerry Charitable Trust behind us. We get involved. We get money from that organization, and we get involved, and we virtually save these buildings. So the organization where you're here and supporting has been very, very successful over the years. This was the Gerry's office, and Peggy had an office up on the third floor. All these houses were card cataloged like a library. And when I saw it, I couldn't believe my eyes, how organized these folks were. But that's all they did. Like I said, the Gerrys were wealthy folks. Roger was a lieutenant or colonel or something in the Navy, and was a dental surgeon. And he was a real architectural enthusiast. And when he came, if you do a timeline here, we say that these guys showed up in the 50s. Well, he was in the service in World War II, and he came back. And what did he do? He had to get back to work, right? So he joined up with a naval hospital somewhere in Queens, and he and Peggy went looking for a place to live, and they came into Roslyn, and they said, "Oh my God!" Just like those settlers that came over from Connecticut, and that was it. They were hooked. Even though they came, he got called back for some kind of duty. They went to Japan for a few years, and the funny story is Roger didn't really want to come back. It was Peggy that wanted to come back, and so much so that we'll walk by their house. She bought this house from Japan, right? And he came back, it was a couple of years later, and things had deteriorated much further. And then he came to find out that Roslyn Road here was then they had planned on widening Roslyn Road. And he said, "You can't do that. We have all of these historic buildings here." They said, you better go to Mineola and talk to this commissioner of works or something. And he went to see the guy, and he says, "Well, Colonel Gerry, if this is something you want to do, you better go scoot back to Roslyn, and you better get a posse together, and you better put some people together, because the wheels are in motion on this thing." And sure enough, Roger got a group together, and they stopped it. That's when he developed this. Personally, they got involved with the village government, and they developed this historic districts. And he set up this Roslyn Landmark Society that we're all part of. And then there was a separate wing called the Roslyn Preservation Corporation, put restrictive covenants. We have at least 33 covenants on houses here that we have bought, restored, board by board. And the Van Nostrand Starkins Museum was one of the first ones that they did. All right.
Where are we going?
All right, we're going to cross over here. Thank you. Thanks very much. All right, well, I'll try to keep my stops to a minimum, especially because I can't talk too much. But Jim just brought up this one here, which is the Remsen House. And this is a house that was moved over here, and this is one of the later ones. And it was all the way over on the other side of the village. And of course, this is a later house, about 1900. You can see this little filigree at the bottom of those dormers there, and there's all this fretwork on the porch. So it's what we call a Queen Anne revival. And the owners put this addition onto the side of the house there to the left. By the way, I'm an architect by trade, so I talk a lot about the architectural elements. But not everybody wants to hear that. They want to hear about the personalities. What a perfect day. This is another one of these Queen Anne revivals, more commonly known as Victorians. And I don't really do a lot of work professionally in the community, but I did touch this one. And that piece on the back that you see there is an addition that was designed by me with the help of Florence, who's also a decorator. And that's really if you're going to put an addition onto one of these buildings, you really want to put it in the back. First and foremost, in the back would be good if you need to enlarge the building. In this case, as you can see, that addition was detached from the original house. The owners did want this additional space. An interesting little story is that dormer along the top always bothered me, and I did actually have the guts to ask them to remove it. And of course they said no. And then the house next door is noteworthy. This is owned by a family of people that did a lot of development in Roslyn on the other side, up on Mackay Way. They have let that house sit there and deteriorate, which is just an annoyance to everyone. But you know, I specifically am very excited to be doing the tour this time around this the duck ponds today, because the houses are all looking in very, very nice condition, most of them. Because what happens with these wood frame buildings is they require a lot of work to keep them up. and they deteriorate very fast if you don't. So let's continue. Then, let me just talk about it now. This is always a charmer here, and everybody always is excited about this one, which is the Dower Cottage. And it is just the cutest little dollhouse. But you know, it's funny, it is so small inside. A nice woman, Anne, has lived in the house for a very long time. She takes such good care of it. And unfortunately, she had to, she came to us because we do have a restrictive covenant on the building, which is what the Landmark Society has. And she really, it cost her a fortune. She had to replace this wooden roof that you see is so beautiful, all these multiple colors. We're going to talk, this gentleman's name is going to come up over and over again today, Henry Western Eastman. And he was really a big shot here in Roslyn, and he owned a lot of property, as a bunch of guys and families did. You had the Hicks, you have the Eastman, you have the Onderdonk, and you have the Valentines. They were all big money people that held big positions in the area. You know, they were elected officials, they were attorneys, they were business people, and they were gigantic landowners. And this was the original Roslyn Savings Bank. And if you we're going to walk around the side there, and if you see that little brick wing over there, okay, that was the bank vault. And believe it or not, if you went inside the house, the steel door that separates the interior from that vault is still there.
Oh my gosh. This was the Roslyn Savings
This
Bank?
was the original Roslyn Savings Bank.
Growing up on this road for the last 6 years.
They didn't keep much money in
It's
there.
amazing. No, I thought I had all this money.
And before that, there was no bank. It was Eastman that said, he says, people need a safe place to put their money. And this was Eastman's house. This was Eastman's house. This is where he lived. And it was never one of my favorite houses, because I think it's kind of odd, but it's interesting. And obviously, it was built in 3 different stages. You have the original building here, the second piece that was there, and then you have the third with the bay window. And this is another one that like I said a few minutes ago, I'm so proud to walk everybody around today, because unfortunately this house was really falling into bad shape, and it just looked terrible. It really wasn't in that bad of a shape. It just needed a good paint job and some TLC. And it looks just like new. And what prompted them to really get on the stick is that actually a car drove down the street very fast, jumped the curb, and went right and destroyed this whole vestibule. And Florence and I were visiting her recently, and she said, guys, we heard this crash, this enormous crash. We came downstairs, and there was a car, like partially in the house, and the woman was wandering around and delirious. Could you imagine? One of these days, I'm going to get them to let us go into the house. All right, so as you can see here, this is one of the 2 horse taming statues that was designed and modeled after one of the horse statues at Versailles. And as somebody pointed out, you know, some years ago, Ian Zwerdling was really a colorful guy here in the village. But one day he got me into one of his station wagons, and we went up. She says, "I'm going to show you something you got to see." And this thing, as somebody pointed out, I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, could you imagine driving up to that greenhouse over there and looking in the back and seeing a horse statue popping up over the top? I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me anymore if I saw a Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know. And then some years later, what happened was the guy went to sell the house, and we approached him and said, you know, you want us to take it. And of course, once he found out that we were interested in it, he tried to sell it to us. We had to raise money to do this thing. So we took it, we had it restored, put it on the base here, and this is where it landed. Isn't that one wonderful story? Now, it's a good vantage point here. That building over there, that road is called Paper Mill Road, that connects Main Street here, Roslyn Road, to East Broadway, which we'll be next to shortly. That house over there, the yellow house with that mansard roof around the top, that's a federal style building. That was the William Valentine house, and we'll walk much closer to it when we get over there onto East Broadway. Okay, but like I said, the paper mill is a replica building, not the original. All right.
There was actually a paper mill.
There was a paper mill. Oh, absolutely. Okay. It burned down. Yeah, like many of them. The sawmill burned down. The reason why there are not these old big wooden structures anymore is because they all burned down. That's why today, you know, when we talk about the development, the architectural development of buildings in this country, you know, when you start to do this research, you say, okay, well, look at all of these school buildings were very small. We're going to talk about the churches. The churches were very small, occupied the same building that a house would occupy. And why? Because there wasn't as many people. There wasn't as many people. Why do we need big buildings today? Because there's more people. Why do we need roads that are bigger? You know, we thank Roger for saving Roslyn Road and all these buildings, but what's the fallout? Traffic. So, you know, what do you do? All right, let's move on back up here, because we got a lot to see still. Where we're standing right here was a harness shop. Look at the size of this building. Look at this thing. Pass it around, Noam. That was right here, Roseanne, right where we're standing. And they on the second floor they had a paint and a specialty shop, right? Building here, that one, and we just walked by it. I'm sorry I didn't point it out, but it's right behind that white fence that you see down there. This house is another high style. This is the ones that I talked about when we were back in the landmarks office. That just another example of high style buildings here with people with that all of a sudden money was here. Look at this house. This is an Empire style house. It's the Warren Wilkie house. And who was Warren Wilkie? He was a very wealthy businessman, traveled back and forth to the city on the Long Island Railroad, probably before. by some other means of transportation, like a steamboat or a coach. Roger and Peggy, this was one of the first buildings that Roger and Peggy took on. That building, when they took it on, was a tenement house. It had been broken up into little apartments, rented out very inexpensively. And I can't help myself from telling this story. The village trustees at that time, the mayor and trustees that were in place did not have this same reputation. And it was kind of anything went here. So what happens in the post-World War II boom, when they're building houses, right? They're building all these tracts of houses like Levittown and everybody else. And where are they building them? Any thoughts? On farmland, on these big flat tracts of land in farmland that's no longer being farmed because the Roslyn's being developed from New York City out. Why on earth would a developer come in and try to build houses on these hillsides? So what happens is that Roslyn starts to kind of fall apart because we're kind of falling out of fashion now. People are not so interested in these houses. They want to be in these brand new tract houses. So that's where you have the Warren Wilkie houses. It's falling into the ground. So Roger and Peggy, they decide when they come back here that they are going to take this whole village on. And that's exactly what they did. And that's why we have to give so much credence to them, because if it were not for them, just on the other side of the Van Nostrand Starkins house, and on that side, we'll see them in a few minutes, are brick apartment buildings. Not even nice ones. They're just laid out like army barracks. And what this village of trustees was almost conned into doing, these developers came in, they wanted to tear this whole thing down, and they were going to put a gigantic parking lot in here, fill these ponds in, and build these ugly apartment buildings down here. And it came this close. They were having a village. I understand that they were having a village trustee meeting, and there were a bunch of people went down there to knock on the door, and they locked the door, and they all snuck out the back and ran home. And because these people that got involved stopped it all. All of this could have just completely gone in a different direction. All right, let's go across the street. We're going to go into this house. For years, Phyllis Minkoff lived in this house, and she took very, very good care of the house, and it was museum-like on the inside, like I had said before. But now, Marcia lives here with her partner. It's interesting to me because, as I was saying before, so many of these houses were both houses, and a lot of them were blacksmith shops or tack shops for horses, taking care of horses. That was a big business then. How did people get around? Horse and carriages. So you needed places to fix them. But now, in a more modern world, we have Marcia here. What does she do for a living? She runs a paint studio. She paints herself, and she teaches other people how to paint. So when I talked to her this week, she said, "Craig, take your group into my house. We're not here, but go on in, anytime." And she said, "But I have my easels out and my paintbrushes all over the place." I said, "Marcia, don't worry about it. Let them see it the way you live." Let's go inside. She's done tours for me before when she had it all gussied up and everything was perfect. So I love to see it like this.
I don't know how to turn all the lights on.
Cozy.
So when Phyllis had the house, there was another wall. There was another wall here, so it was very compartmentalized. Marcia came in and she brought this local architect, Alan Cooper, who's very good. And Alan assured me, he says, Craig, I gave in and I said, all right, you can modify the building. Just make sure you reproduce all of these moldings like that were here, which is really not that difficult. You know, contractors today, they think it's so difficult to do that. It's not. You can find this stuff. You can wander around into the other piece. Watch out. I think it's a step up. When Roger and Peggy restored the Wilkie house next door, they were inches away from being complete when they started to build this chalet apartment complex behind us. And the contractor that was building it had a kerfuffle, and there was a big rain. They weren't holding the soil back, and there was a gigantic mudslide that went right into that building right before it was finished.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This area, this whole corner, this whole piece of corner here is what's known as Kirby's Corner. Why is it called Kirby's Corner? Because Captain Kirby was a ship captain, and he had a fleet of sailing boats, and he had built a federal style mansion on the opposite corner here, right across the street of the Van Nostrand Starkins Museum, where we are. And this is a fascinating story. So this is a picture of the house that was there, and guess what? It was an original federal building behind, but this is very common stylistically. When the Greek Revival period came around, and he had a lot of money, like everybody else, he wanted Greek Revival. So what did they do? They plastered this Greek Revival front on it with this portico. Remember I talked about when you say Greek Revival and you see a picture like this, you say, oh, okay, I get it. A pediment, a colonnade, right? So, but the interesting part is when the property was sold, because they put another one of those apartment complexes there, they literally took this house and moved it, and where they moved it into Westbury. And they attached it to the Cornelius Vanderbilt mansion. Look, Ian dragged me over there to see it years ago.
Oh my goodness. And what's happened to it now?
It's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah. All right, let's go over to the Van Nostrand Starkins Museum. You're welcome.
Very nice of her. She didn't have the fresh moose out though.
The church bell. Careful.
Really make this very interactive.
I don't want to lose anybody, you know. This whole corner here, this was known as Kirby's Corner because Captain Kirby, he owned all of this property, and all the way up by the railroad trestle. He owned that, and that house that I showed you with the Greek Revival front pasted on was on that corner. In this cute little house over there, it used to be, Roger and Peggy had made it pristine. All right, let me just open it up. me just open it up. They literally took this building apart, like they did all of them, piece by piece, analyzed them. They had Guy Ladd-Frost and John Stevens, and John Stevens especially was very involved with this project. There used to be a placard here that used to talk about the stages of the development that they thought that the building had gone through. There's a lot of conjecture here about what it is. So this is just the best guess at what the building looked like in 1680. At one point, again, it was just a derelict building, but the little piece in the back here that we call Kirby's Cottage, because this was all part of Kirby's Corner, was actually attached to this building, and they detached it, moved it, and now it's a little house that a single guy lives in. It's very small inside. Okay, but look at how the way people lived here. I mean, I always like talking about this building because could you imagine living in here in the wintertime? Imagine how cold it would be. I mean, there's no insulation. They relied upon a wood-burning fireplace to keep themselves warm. You can't go all the way up, but as you go out and go through the front door, just peekaboo upstairs, you see there were some sleeping quarters up there. You wonder how people made it through the winter. It was prior to global warming. Like I said earlier, we're going to talk about churches today. And there was this building here was a parsonage for a Methodist church. And that Methodist church was right there, right where that gate is, and just in front of that barn. And it was an old Gothic wooden structure. I love this little blurb that they have in this write-up, and this comes from Roslyn Then and Now. Roy Mosher, thank you. But this Methodist church, Methodism originally came to our community in 1787 when Bishop Francis Ashbury, visiting in this country from England, preached in Hempstead Harbor. Now, Hempstead Harbor was what this area was known as before it was Roslyn. It wasn't named Roslyn. Somebody asked about Roslyn. Where it came from, who knows, but it was a little village in Scotland someplace, Roslin. Bishop Ashbury, visiting this country from England, preached in Hempstead Harbor, which is here, and Bishop, in his journal, he states, rode 20 miles from New York. Now, in 1787, how did he get here? Running those 20 miles in a horse and buggy. He also states in his journal that 2 days later, he also preached with some liberty in the evening, and where? In the paper mill. Right? So, this church, not unlike yours, Jim, burnt down, and what happened here is that it burned all the way down. I don't know what year it was, but they were, by the time the firemen got here, the roof on that building was on fire. They were able to get it under control, and they saved it, but they built this ugly flat roof. The Methodists, they moved up to Warner Avenue, if anybody here knows where that is, and it's just a miracle to me. I always thought that church, I didn't know the history of it, on Warner Avenue. I said, someday, I'm so worried that church is going to get torn down. And but it didn't. I think just like your church, they were able to muster up a bunch of other people. And like what we'll talk about is that I realized when I was at your building a couple of weeks ago, the same thing is happening at Trinity Church, that the churches today, they have these, watch out, Gene, you have a bee. These churches have nurseries and little schools to help them exist. I mean, let's face facts. People don't go to church like they used to. When I was a kid, it was like everybody went to church, or worshiped in whatever way you do. So these buildings require a lot of maintenance. They need the money, and churches have an awful hard time getting money from organizations because they don't always like to donate to religious organizations. We're almost there, Jim. Here we are with Jim.
Is this your church? Or?
Well,
Yes.
my church, I just happen to be here.
Oh, okay.
One of the Presbyterian, one of the 60 here on Long Island.
Oh, really?
60?
That's 60.
It was a very nice write-up that I'd just like to read quickly. It just says it so nicely about the architecture of the building. It says that, because this is a 20th century building, and as we know, in Roslyn, again, I was talking about buildings and them growing in size, and in the early 20th century, the 1920s, is when we start to see these bigger buildings emerging in Roslyn. We have the Carpenter's Hall right across the street from where we were earlier. We have the library, the Roslyn Savings Bank. We have these bigger buildings. And why? Because population is growing. They need to be bigger. The 1828 building is an impressive example of colonial revival architecture. Now remember, we talk about these revival designs. So this is not an original colonial building. We call it a revival because it's an older style that's come back into vogue and we're going to repeat it again. Not like some of the original colonial buildings were original colonials. Okay, so the focal point of the church is the steeple rising above the full height pedimented portico, which is what you'd call that, towering above the treetops of the neighborhood park. The steeple is an easily recognizable Roslyn landmark. Members of the congregation pass through a double leaf entrance set in an elaborate colonial revival surround with a broken pediment. Located on both sides of the sanctuary are large arched windows to provide full lit sanctuary. And now let's walk inside, and I'm going to let Jim talk a little bit here. He was kind enough to, with the congregation, invite us to come and see the interior of the building. Hi. Weren't you Mike? Well, it is an easy name to remember, right? Craig.
How you doing?
Hi. I'm so sorry that we took so long. Hi, Robert. How are you? So nice to see you again. I'm glad you're here. I had such a nice conversation with you when I saw you the last time.
Welcome, walkers.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Thank you.
Hi, Pastor. Good
Hello,
to see you.
how are you?
Welcome.
Hi, Michael, and Gary, and
Please stand next to him so you can get the mic.
I like these light fixtures.
Yeah.
Aren't they beauties?
Yeah, they are beautiful.
Katie did these chicken salad sandwiches.
we're good.
Help yourself to some chicken salad sandwiches that Katie made.
And if you go back to the, what I call our forefathers, with the independence, you know the Anglicans were very loyal to Britain, and the Presbyterians were very loyal to the Americans. So John Witherspoon was a Presbyterian, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and we believe that no bishop should rule over the people. as they do like with some of the Episcopal churches, Methodist churches. Some of the Protestants have bishops. So going back to what Betty was sharing with me, when the minister here joined in the Civil Rights March, this church here was very progressive at that time. And we also have a congregation underneath here, and you're welcome to go downstairs, and that's a Taiwanese congregation. And they've been with us. And then also we have a wonderful nursery and children's program that's been here at least 50 years, run by the same family and her daughter that's going on. And the people here have been wonderful. And as Betty was reminding us, the 100-year-old woman, she said, what's exciting about 100 is I can't wait for the next election. I want to vote in that election. Because you can imagine some of her sentiments of what's going on in our country, where people are being marginalized, people are being brutalized. And so we really feel as Presbyterians, as people of faith, we want to allow people to have freedom of their own conscience. And that's one of the major hallmarks of a Presbyterian. That, as you can see in Presbyterian churches, some have stained glass windows, some have it very simple, like this one. But we always want to welcome people and make sure they feel very welcome. So if there's anybody who desires to come with us, and we wanted to reach out to the Historical Society. We met this wonderful gentleman here, and I wanted to also take a tour because I'm from the South Shore. So thank you for allowing us to be part of the tour.
This is a house I wanted to spend more time at, but we're not going to. Yeah, you know what? This is like every man's favorite house. This was a schoolhouse. I think I had mentioned this one when we were talking earlier. This was a one-room schoolhouse in this center section, and it was constructed and it was in Glenhead, and it was moved here. As I said, so many of these buildings were moved here. And it was originally a schoolhouse. When it was here for a while, it was a store. Remember, they're used for all these different purposes, but it didn't have that second story on it with those little eyebrow windows. That was a later addition. But yes, Mike, this is like every man's dream house, right? It looks like just a house that's tucked up into the woods.
Three little windows. I've seen that in a lot of different places up here.
Our own house. It's a half of a story.
It's a half a story, right?
Yes. So when our own house has the same thing.
I love the rock in front of it.
Well, and this owner that bought it has done an awful lot of work to it, and he's very enthusiastic. He restored all of the garage windows, and then most importantly, that this was the original Presbyterian church here.
You mean right here?
Yeah, no, the yellow house.
Oh, the yellow.
Look.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. Yeah.
That have this house.
The original church.
Yes, let me show you. You're gonna love this.
See? That's what I'm doing. I'm glad I came on this tour.
I am too. I am too.
Another church over there, look.
Yeah.
Wow, there we go.
Right.
So,
This was the original church, you see?
just got rid of the stack on top
Yeah.
of it.
There's a steeple.
With the
Wow.
yellow houses?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
Wow.
and this is the garage?
Yes.
You could even
That's
see
the
the
garage?
window, the long window.
And so, that,
Yeah.
And
Front.
behind those two-story windows, it's a church. It's an unbelievable house.
wow, so they,
Yes, there's a. Did you ever see this, Roseanne? Look, this was the original Presbyterian church. That building,
That
right?
house?
Yes.
Oh my God.
There's a two-story space in there, and that's where they
yeah,
preached.
see, look how big it is. Yeah. The steeple
Just like the other church, where that organ is and everything up there in the back of the house. That's where it is. Unbelievable.
1912, it still was a pretty nice lake at that point.
Yeah.
'Cause
Oh, sure. It's 20th century.
Yeah, but when you say Gerry came, I thought he took him from swamp into lake. Remember you said it was very swampy down this
Yes.
area?
But that was a long.
That was way,
Oh, yeah.
way before he.
Yeah. Now you see this stone here? That stone was placed there. Let me get everybody.
Wow.
Now this stone here, you see the stone that's placed? That stone was placed there so that when the horse and carriage would come and drop people off, the women could get out and step right off of the carriage and onto that stone and go up into the church.
See, always hospitality. Always hospitality.
Because don't forget, that was her horse and drawn carriages, and the roads were dirt. Florence and I designed this park. We should take this a little credit for that. The mayor had come to us and said that we got some money when the atria came in. Part of the development funding went to doing beautification projects. And he said, Craig, can you and Florence get some sketch paper and come up with some ideas? And we laid it out. And the funny story is that we designed these trellises that are actually made of metal. We have a metal shop that we work with, Mineola Ironwork, and they look like wood, but they're made of metal. And I said to Florence, all right, Florence, we need a color, because Florence is the colorist. And she picked this granny apple green, and boy, did we get a lot of flack about it. And why aren't they black, right? And I said, well, Florence said they're green, and green they are.
There you go.
And green they stayed.
It's good, like a good Presbyterian.
That is very nice color.
Isn't it nice?
It pops. Any other color would die in the bushes.
Right, it would disappear. Sorry.
Right, you can see it.
You know? One more story here. That Florence and I worked with an artist to develop this statue, because of course we had to find something for the middle. And this fellow's name is Charlie Palatakis, a Greek guy, and he does these sculptures, and he came up with this concept, and it was inspired by the DNA strand. And he's done many of these, and he has these two put together, and because he says what happens is that they move very differently depending upon where you are. They constantly changes shape. Yeah.
I'm gonna go get that.
I can see that.
Right?
Then you need to move around.
What year did that get put in?
It's completely different.
Looks like two hairpins now. The old-fashioned ones.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
You're me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hi, Don. How are you?
Nice to
I'm
see
so
you.
hope we haven't kept you too long. Hi. Hi. So nice to meet you.
Is it open?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I got it.
I love this building. Oh. Ah. What do you think, Mike?
pretty cool.
Huh?
Very cool.
So,
I always wondered what it was like in here. I drove by so many times.
well, it hasn't looked like this until Don got his hands on it. You know, the Roslyn Landmark Society has taken this project on. And it's been a project we've been trying to get off the ground for many, many, many years. And when I say I'm happy to report that when we got involved with it, we really made it happen. And it's a project of such enormity financially. This is a multi-million dollar restoration. It's an extraordinarily important building because it's one of maybe two that exist, certainly in the United States, maybe in the world. It's a Dutch frame building. It's you can see by the size of the timbers, it's a way over designed building. These structural members are called bents, and they're placed at every 5 foot on center, and it's just built to such extraordinary structural design to hold a tremendous amount of load. And you can attest that to the fact that it holds flour and that is very heavy when it's ground up. But the former groups that tried to restore this building, they tried to raise money by selling T-shirts and cupcakes and stuff like that, and that just wasn't going to happen. You needed serious money to do this. We got money the first money we got was from the state, which was $500,000. The Gerry Charitable Trust ponied up $500,000, and we kept continuously getting monies coming in. Our own president of the organization put up $1 million of his own money. We just got $1 million from Nassau County, and which is the first million of two. So those are the kind of dollars that this kind of a project needs, because it's being authentically reproduced by virtue of people like John Waite and Associates, who are specialists. There's only a handful of people that know how to deal with a building like this from an architectural standpoint. There's only a handful of people like Don and his team that know how to implement the work that way. So the good news is that we're well into it. There's a water wheel that's going to be placed on the other side, because as we talked very early today, hours ago, this originally was not a road. All this was a mill dam, which had to be built in order to get the water to come through, to drive this axle and turn with gears and turn these two stones together that literally did what they had to do. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Don.
We're at a monumental point right now where we're just about ready to put the roof on. So what we do, because as Craig mentioned, we're working with Jack Waite architectural firm, and they are all about historical preservation to the highest standards. So this is actually a mock-up. So what we're trying to avoid is the do-over. So what we do is we do something like this, and then the architects come out and they approve it, and then we can move forward. And that's where we're at right now. And it's pretty interesting. It's a Western red cedar. So yeah, this is not something that you would find in the Home Depot. It's from Vancouver, and a beautiful product. And most likely, this is what was on the building originally. So as I said, it's a 30-inch shingle with a 10-inch reveal, and that will be the finished product. All white oak purlins, which was there originally. So as I said, this is a big turning point for us to get this roof on the building, just to protect the timbers. And
now, when you put that, is that going to be like that color? Do you guys stain the wood, or?
you know, that's a good question, but architecturally, they were saying that they would rather just leave this and have the patina go to that grayish look. I think that the cedar will turn. Yeah, no preservatives or anything like that.
How many years would that last?
I'm going to venture to say probably a good 50 to 60 years. Yeah, cedar roof like that. But there's a lot of cool things that happened here since I've been here in 2019. All the posts were removed and brought up to Vermont and restored by Jan Lewandowski, who is a timber framer, if not like the best timber framer in the country. And it's quite interesting if you look closely. He added new material to the old material. So that was like a gigantic project. All of these, this was up on temporary shoring. The tie beams, meaning the floor beams, were just shored up with iron. And then the posts all disappeared up into Vermont for almost a year, and then brought back and reintroduced. all wooden peg. And if you look closely, the way that, as Craig mentioned, there's 15 vents in this building. The Dutch would frame on the ground and then stand each vent up, kind of like the way the Amish build barns. And if you look at the ancient marks right here, so this is vent number 8. So they would put a Roman numeral that would correspond with the post and with the diagonal brace.
And they use pegs
All pegs. All pegs.
instead of steel bolts like
Right.
they do on most.
Right. That's correct. So yeah, just to be a fly on the wall to see them raising up these vents would be an amazing thing to
Right.
see. It really would be. So yeah, no nails. The only nails would be in the floor and the siding. And this is a mock-up of what the siding is going to look like. Right there. Architects approved this. So we do have all this material down below. And this will be applied hopefully shortly.
One of the most unique features of this building is the fact that these posts are notched out for these boards to sit on there. You see?
Yeah.
It was built more like a ship than it was a building. Very, very few examples of this exist anywhere.
Yeah, very, very labor intensive to create the bevel, as you're saying, Craig. They would actually bevel the posts and apply flat stock to the bevel, and that's how you would get your beveled siding. It's just amazing the way they did that. And that was all done down below, most likely by an apprentice, and stood up.
Yeah.
So that is a very, from what I understand from the architects, this is one of the few examples of this type of framing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They notch all these beams.
Yes.
So
They
these
notch
are
the
all
beam
notched.
and then apply flat stock.
Yeah.
So that is pretty fascinating.
If you did that and you made this into some kind of a use, and you had to insulate it and put all kinds of systems, you'd lose the beauty of this thing, and it really should be kept for the purposes of even seasonal, displays, art exhibits, throughout the summer, and then the winter time, the building just sits here.
Yes.
I can really imagine that people from all over the world would come and visit and just want to see this very, very important building.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of small intricacies. You can see how they hand-hewn these original beams. You can actually see that hewing marks that they would stand on a round log and just work their way down, squaring off these beams. Yeah. And the more time you spend here, you find these little intricacies. There's these interesting circles throughout the building. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, that's it.
And that I'm finding throughout the building. And what's real interesting is there is another Dutch mill at the Van Wyck Mill in Huntington. I went there for a visit, and I'm finding those same marks on those posts in that building. So I don't know. My guess is that somebody was trying their brace and bit to see if it was sharp. That's just my guess.
That's a good guess.
But I mean, all kinds of things like why were there notches, like in the diagonal brace. You see that one there.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
And what the architects did come up with over here, this one rounded off, was that the staircase most likely was there, and that's where it's going to go back. So you can duck under that diagonal and then approach the second floor.
Makes sense.
I always thought that that's where the millwright sat, and he stood up and hit his head and just got so annoyed that he kind of turned that out. These are the original nails for the floor. These are the original hand-hewn nails for the floor and the siding. And these are the reproductions that we're going to be using for the siding and the floor.
Spikes.
Yeah. So that's going to be quite an interesting detail on the outside of the building to see that big head in the side. That's going to look really cool. So there's some guy in Brooklyn banging these out for us.
Wow.
It's like 2,000. So yeah. Here's a mock-up of the shutters. There's going to be no windows, just shutters and doors. This is a mock-up that we did and approved by the architect, so we'll be moving forward. This is what the shutters will look like from the outside. That's the detail. So no glass,
No glass, huh?
no glass, no beautiful view.
Oh, they should keep that there.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's not gonna happen.
why is that? Why would
Preservation to the highest
You're
standards.
purists.
There was 50 tons of concrete on the building. The roof was simulated shingle made of concrete, which was quite unusual, done in 1916. And this was a concrete floor. So what's going back is this 1.5-inch pine spline floor will be applied to this floor. We did a small mock-up just above us. There was a fire here at one time, right? That took out some of this flooring, but this floor is the original floor. So this is what's going patching, and this is what will go throughout the whole first floor.
And that's a recent fire, right?
I think so. And yeah, that's why you see vent number 5, which is this one here. This is a brand new high beam. You can see there's no marks in it. This one and vent number 3 is new. And 15, the first one is brand new. So there's quite a bit of work involved in trying to get these in. Unlike the colonial guys, we had a big crane set up here, bringing these beams in. And, so, but it's been a fascinating project, and I have to give a shout out to the artisans that have been on the job. Jan Lewandowski, Amy Boyce. There's just been people, carpenter, timber framers, and some of the guys actually worked over in France on the Notre Dame project, and we had those guys here doing this work.
Wow.
So it's been a great learning experience for me too. So,
I'll bet. It's a
Yeah.
once in a lifetime, right?
yes,
Right, Don?
very cool to watch. Yeah. But monumental getting this roof on, getting the plastic off, and just having the building protected.
Yeah.
It's gonna look
And then all the siding is down below.
Yeah.
Because
Give
the
it that
architects want us
sense of
to
confidence.
pre-stain that before we apply.
Nice.
And that's that smell you're getting. It's a pine tar, green
Yeah.
seed finish. So we did all the trim work. We just finished the application of the trim work. And you step outside, you'll see the rake boards and the fascia boards. And so we're ready for this roofing.
Well, Don, thank you very, very much. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Yeah, that's really, it's really a treat. I've been looking forward to coming here all week.
It's a fascinating project. It really is.
Happy again? Anybody?
Wow, I love it.
Nice,
Thank you very
right?
much. What?
It was nice,
That was
right?
wonderful. Nice to meet both of you.
Yeah, same here.
Yes. See you again. All right, yeah, drop in any time there, huh? You're always welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. All right, thank you. Thank you. That wonderful tour. Appreciate that.
Goodbye, everybody.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
It's actually going to be the color of the whole building.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be the application. Pine tar and linseed.
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, like you said, that'll turn gray.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, as I said, get this roof on. Maybe I'll get a good night's sleep, not worrying about that plastic's blowing on. Wake up at night, I hear the wind blowing.
Thanks for the tour.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye. Thank you.